tell us about the times when someone's bossy orders made you so annoyed that you decided to do it word for word, out of pure spite. So the host wants me to cancel my own booking. Sure thing, no problem. About 2 months before St. Patrick's Day weekend, I booked a place in Dublin. It was an old B&B, nothing fancy, but for 115 euros a night, at least we had a roof over our heads. And on the busiest weekend of the year, that was the cheapest option available. It was one double bed for me and a friend, payment upon arrival. 3 weeks before the trip, the manager messaged me through the booking app saying there was a problem. According to him, I couldn't stay there anymore and had to cancel the reservation myself immediately. No apology, no offer to help, just cancel right now. After that, he started spamming me daily with calls and messages demanding cancel your booking so you can get your money back. Reminder, my payment was due only at check-in, so something smelled fishy. I checked the listing for the dates I had booked and, surprise surprise, the same property was suddenly available again, but now at double the price. Clearly, the manager realized St. Patrick's weekend was a goldmine and wanted to cash in. Eventually, after the manager kept bugging me, I called Booking.com and told them I wanted to cancel, but also explained the whole situation. The rep immediately agreed that the hotel's behavior was shady and unfair. She offered a solution. They would find me another place within 1 kilometer of the original booking. At first, they tried suggesting random spots way out of the way, but I refused. Here's the kicker. The price difference would be covered by the original host. Now, finding a room in Dublin during St. Patrick's weekend is like trying to start a campfire in a thunderstorm with a wet potato and a spoon. Nearly impossible. Within a 1 kilometer radius, the only available option was a famous 4-star hotel. The room was huge, had 2 double beds, and was in a much nicer neighborhood. Price tag, 350 euros per night. The rep put me on hold to check with her supervisor. I went about my chores, and after 25 minutes, she came back with confirmation. They sent me a special link, and I happily booked it. And results, the greedy host who wanted to pressure me into canceling ended up owing 235 euros. Meanwhile, we got a luxury hotel room for the same price as the shabby B&B. I did pay 350 euros up front, but after submitting receipts and proof, I got my 235 euro refund the next week. The CEO wanted to bring everyone back to the office. The CTO had the perfect reply. I've been working remotely for about 7 years in a Spanish company, and we all know each other pretty well. I've been working with the CTO for 10 years. He's a great guy as long as the work gets done. Even before 2020, we had a very human-friendly remote policy. Work from wherever you want as long as deadlines are met. So when the pandemic hit, transitioning to remote work went smoothly. In fact, we even used the opportunity to hire tech people from other regions, offering salaries lower than city rates but higher than what they could get locally. I moved myself out of the city at that time. The CEO didn't want to handle sales, so in 2021, the company hired a new CEO, an Englishman with great references living in the countryside. At first, he seemed reasonable and normal, but once the pandemic ended, he started pushing hard to bring everyone back to the office. He ran surveys, sent long emails about how the office builds team spirit, and basically pressured the CTO to enforce it. Employees who lived nearby started coming to the office just to keep the CEO happy. One day, the CEO finally said during a regular tech department meeting, "Okay, I want everyone in the office on Tuesday. If you live far away, take a train, drive, doesn't matter, I'll pay, just be here." So we all showed up. Every employee in the department, including those with 2-3 hour commutes, was in the office. Guess who wasn't there? Yep, the CEO himself. The CTO snapped a photo, sent it to the COO, and wrote something like, "If you can't lead by example, don't force my people to do something that doesn't make sense." After that, we went out for lunch and some beers. Just a chill human day. Result, the forced return to office plan never happened. The CEO left the company a year later. The office closed. Everyone now works fully remote, and to everyone's surprise, the CTO became the acting CEO. Now the company runs smoothly. Back in 2008, my family and I moved into a house. 5 bedrooms, about 3,200 square feet. Rent was $1,600 a month. At the time, that was a fair price, and it didn't change for many years. I'm pretty handy with tools, so whenever something broke, I fixed it myself. That way I didn't have to bother the elderly landlord. Over the years, we lived there a long time, and I made plenty of improvements to the place. Fast forward to 2024, the landlord passed away, and his son inherited the house. A week later, the son came by from inspection. He started opening drawers and poking through my personal stuff, which is totally not allowed. Then he got rude, so I stopped him. On his way out, he handed me a notice that rent was going up to $4,000 a month. That's about $1,000 more than the market rate in the area. If he had asked for something reasonable, I might have stayed, but I wasn't about to pay that much. According to my month-to-month lease, he was required to give 3 months notice before raising rent. I pointed that out, then informed him that I'd be moving out once those 3 months were up. A few days later, I got an eviction notice. The thing is, he couldn't legally evict me without cause, and even then, he still had to give 3 months notice, so he tried to invent a reason. His excuse? That I had made unauthorized modifications to the property. For example, he pointed to the back door where I had installed a little doggy flap, but guess what? I still had the original door stored in the garage, and the previous landlord himself had approved the doggy flap. So no, it wasn't an illegal modification. Still, when the case went to court, the judge ruled either you move out within 30 days or he can go ahead with the eviction. And then the judge specifically added, all changes must be restored to their original condition. And that's when the true malicious compliance began. So I went all in. I removed every smart gadget I had installed, tore down the backyard shed, filled in the little pond I had built, took apart all the closet organizers, shelving, and hooks in the garage, swapped out the modern appliances for the cheapest budget versions I could find. Only after restoring everything to its boring original state did I move out. The new landlord wasn't happy. He sued me, claiming I had destroyed property. His lawyer argued that by law, any upgrades become part of the house and can't just be taken away when you leave. But my lawyer simply pointed to the judge's earlier ruling, all changes must be restored to their original condition. I had receipts and proof that everything I removed was installed by me, at my own expense, and that I was legally required to undo it. I won the case, and he even had to cover my legal fees. A few months later, I got a call from his sister. Some of my mail was still showing up at the old address, and she wanted to make sure I'd get it. We ended up chatting, and the topic drifted to the whole landlord drama. That's when she told me the real story. Turns out, the house had actually been inherited by 4 siblings, not just the one brother. He had lied to them all. First, he jacked up my rent on purpose, knowing I'd leave because he had already made a deal to sell the house to a big rental company. Then he told his siblings that the property had negative value, so they wouldn't expect any payout. In reality, the mortgage was fully paid off and the place was worth around $700,000. The rental company's offer included all the improvements I had installed, but since I had removed everything, he couldn't afford to rebuild it and the deal fell through. His siblings found out, sued him, and the truth came out. In the end, the house sold for about $550,000. The 3 siblings agreed not to press fraud charges as long as they could split the money between themselves, and the lying brother, he got absolutely nothing. My boss yelled at me for following instructions and next time told me to do everything the opposite. Guess what? It backfired on her. About 20 years ago, I worked as an assistant in a small office. We received client orders and outsourced them to freelance pros, well-paid, respected in their field. My boss was also a pro, and when possible, she handled tasks herself. I took the job from minimum wage because she promised that sometimes I could take on freelance projects with good pay, that she personally trained me, and that in less than a year, I'd likely become a full-time freelancer with a great income. I was naive and young, and it seemed like an excellent career path. One of the first things she told me, when you take an order, you're basically the project manager. You need to make sure the freelancer delivers on time because the work is usually urgent. She loved giving long lectures about how she pays me minimum wage so I'd think for myself and figure things out. Most of her speeches were just ego boosts, constantly reminding us that we weren't as smart as her. One day, our biggest corporate client placed a huge order, due Monday by noon. The task was assigned to my boss, who was supposed to handle it over the weekend. Monday morning comes and she's nowhere in the office. The client calls asking if the order will be ready on time. Urgent matter. I try calling my boss. No answer. Half an hour later, I send a message. Silence. Noon approaches. I call her home number. Her husband picks up and says she's not home. I briefly explain why I was trying to reach her. Less than an hour before the deadline, she calls back, furious, screaming that I caused panic at her home and violated her boundaries. Her home number is only for emergencies, she says. This wasn't an emergency. Unprofessional to call people at home when they're not at work. She insists everything is under control and she'll personally deliver the work to the client. When she finally came to the office, she gave me a one-on-one scolding. She said, yes, I'm supposed to push freelancers, but not her. That's her business. She knows all the clients. They are her clients. She looked me in the eye. If I take a task, it's no longer yours, it's mine. Don't remind me. You just pass along instructions from the client and that's it. I handle the rest. Your work ends there. I never miss deadlines. If a client calls, I tell them she's handling it. No reminders, no calls, no text. I apologized for the panic I inadvertently caused and repeated her instructions out loud to confirm I understood. She was very pleased and gave me her usual narcissistic lecture about how she pays me minimum wage so I'll think for myself, peppered with condescending examples of her brilliance compared to ordinary workers. I just nodded along. About a month later, a new client order came in. I accepted it, my boss was free, I forwarded everything to her, and considered my part done, as instructed. On the day of the deadline, I was on vacation hiking in the countryside, with poor reception. Another office assistant called me. The client was asking if the work was ready. I told her that my boss was personally handling it. Everything was under control, and under no circumstances should anyone remind her about the deadline. Since I was on vacation and needed to conserve phone battery, I simply turned my phone off. This clearly wasn't an emergency. Meanwhile, my boss completely forgot about the deadline. When she realized the office was closed, she rushed to finish the work, but it turned out she didn't know the clients as well as she claimed. She didn't even have their contact info. She had to go to the office herself to get materials and find contacts. errors, sending the completed work late. It was especially awkward because a colleague had already told the client she was personally handling it. When I returned from vacation, the office was chaos. She yelled at me, but I calmly explained that I had followed her instructions to the letter. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "You told me to," I replied. "Why didn't you do that?" "You said not to," I said. She was furious, but knew I was right. I did exactly what she told me. She also yelled that my phone was off, and I explained I was saving battery for real emergencies, which this was not. You could say the malicious compliance worked, right? Narcissists never take blame though, so she tried shifting it on me. "You didn't include client contact info in the order. How was I supposed to send the work?" I calmly reminded her that she claimed to know all the clients personally. If she had actually been thinking, she would have seen that all client instructions were on official letterheads with contacts printed on every page, top and bottom. Seeing her fragile ego crumble like that was priceless. Even now, I smile thinking of her face. Of course I got fired, but I didn't care. Don't you love happy endings like that? A few months ago, our company got a new investor who immediately started acting like the boss. And let me tell you, the guy was a certified mega pickle. He came in swinging, cleaning up inefficiencies, cutting anything he thought was a waste of time, and showing zero patience. After watching us for a week, he called a big staff meeting to fix the problems he had supposedly noticed. But it wasn't really a meeting. It was a 20-minute monologue of, "We talk, you do, or you leave." The one line that stuck in everyone's head was, "If we want your opinion, we'll ask for it, period." And pretty quickly, it became obvious that line was aimed directly at me. Our company had been dealing with massive turnover. Because of my role, I interacted with everyone and knew exactly why. People were quitting because the job they got wasn't the job they thought they were signing up for. I'd hear the same thing over and over. If I had known this is what I'd be doing, I never would have accepted the offer. Most new hires thought they'd be doing customer support, answering calls and emails. Instead, 90% of their time was spent sweating in the warehouse, endlessly packing online orders. I shared this with management, just passing along what exiting employees were saying. They thanked me and sent me on my way. But the new boss was furious. He decided to hold a whole separate meeting dedicated to unwanted advice. Later, they pulled me into a private meeting. They brought up the feedback I had passed along from departing employees and said they interpreted it as me accusing them of misleading people during hiring. I explained that wasn't my intention at all. I was just relaying what people themselves had said. Didn't matter. They doubled down and repeated the same line. "If we want your opinion, we'll ask for it, period." That's when I realized the message was aimed squarely at me, so I asked them to clarify, what exactly counts as opinion or advice? The new boss smirked and said, "If it's not a direct question about your specific job tasks, we don't want to hear it. We don't need your thoughts on how to run the business. We don't need your ideas about handling situations, and we definitely don't need gossip about what other employees say. Just do your job." Well then, no problem. I'd been with the company for years, and up until now, my input had always been valued. But if they didn't want it anymore, that was their choice. I could respect that. Around 5 weeks ago, a new warehouse worker joined and started venting to others about not wanting to spend 8 hours a day sweating over orders. Unlike previous employees, he didn't quit. He just bottled up his frustration. Then one day, he finally snapped. I was upstairs at my desk when I heard a loud crash. I ran down to the warehouse and saw him furiously smashing customer orders. A few other employees gathered around, watching and laughing. It looked like a scene straight out of a cartoon. Of course, the new boss came running when he heard the noise. The warehouse guy got fired immediately. They asked me if I knew what triggered it. I told them, "I'm not sure what the last straw was, but he'd been complaining for weeks about being forced to work long hours in a stifling warehouse. Maybe he just reached his limit." The boss asked, "Why didn't you tell us?" I calmly replied, "Because last time I shared feedback from employees, you accused me of implying that you were misleading people during hiring, and then told me to stop gossiping. You should have seen his face. Priceless." Of course, I got a little scolding afterward for taking instructions too literally and being petty. But I didn't care. I then took inventory of the destroyed goods and calculated that the company took a loss of roughly $10,000. Some of the broken items were worth $2,000 each. Honestly, I felt amazing. Maybe I was petty, but damn, it was worth it. A little backstory. 15 years ago, I worked at a gas station, opening shifts at the store. Being young and a bit tech-savvy, I basically became the IT guy for the 3 nearby locations. I was heavily involved in installing a new POS system in the 2 most successful stores when they rebranded. To make the transition smoother, the company made me a super admin on all terminals. This detail is important. Remember it. During all those years, I had to deal with the owner's wife, a real terror. The owner himself promoted me to open shifts, but she absolutely hated that a guy held the position. Historically, all shifts shift openers were women, chosen by her. Once, her husband fired the previous employee for theft and, in effect, put me in her place. From that point, she made my life miserable. Constant warning calls, yelling over minor stuff. You wipe the coffee machine area with wet wipes instead of paper towels and spray? Well, there weren't any paper towels. The spray smelled like a hospital. Another time, the fridge was full of apple-flavored drinks. 3 rows. But 2 rows needed to be other flavors. The layout was controlled by the supplier, and legally, we weren't allowed to change it. Long story short, she hated me simply for being a man. I had the super admin POS account because I knew the system, and I was also frantically job hunting. Eventually, I got a new IT offer, which later led me to where I am now. I sent my resignation to the owner, giving 2 weeks notice, but I didn't tell her, just avoided her as much as possible. On the Tuesday of my last week, she found out, went ballistic, and piled a ton of tasks on me, working me to the bone until Friday lunch. Finally, it was time to leave for good. She came personally with an office employee, stood next to me, and said, "Delete your account from the POS." I thought, fine, whatever. I deleted my account, then went to another store and did the same right in front of her. About 3 weeks later, I got a frantic voice message from her. There were 20 messages and several missed calls. I called the office employee who had been there with me and learned the problem. She couldn't change prices at all. At that time, new prices for beer and soda were coming in. The new shift opener just let everything slide because she didn't know how to handle it. Prices ended up 5 to 10% lower than they should have been, cutting into profits. I thought it through and messaged her, "You asked me to do this. There is video proof. We have 3 witnesses, the person I trained, the employee I overlapped with, and the office staff member." Later, I found out they had to pay $6,000 to get a company out to restore admin access. By the way, the owner's wife once had a social media page where people joked about dancing on her grave someday. She's still alive, just for the record. I wasn't the only person whose life she made miserable. Thanks for reading. Share your own stories of malicious compliance in the comments. And don't forget to check out our other videos. See you next time.